Welcome back, everybody. I am here with my first guest from Alaska. Okay. And not only is it just cool to hear what he's been doing, but his story of how he created this company, the hurdles he's gone through, the journey he's been on with his wife and his now growing family is one I could not bypass. I literally DM'd him a few times. I was like, we got to do this. So I'm thrilled to have on today Collin Strachan, co-founder and director of photography at Every Mile Creative. Collin, how are you, man?
I'm doing well, Dave. I appreciate the time, man. Excited to connect with you.
Oh, truly, dude, I'm thrilled on this one, right? Like I always tell everybody, it's like I dive in, I see your stuff on LinkedIn, and the pictures are just captivating, right? Of what you can create, and we're going to get into that. But as I was, like reading your stuff and reading your story, it's not your typical, yeah, you do some cool pictures in Alaska. That's great. That's part of it. But the story of how you came to be, the journey with your wife, your growing family, the chances you took, the hurdles you had to overcome, like literally, even dating back to as a kid. I really want to get into that, man. So let's not waste any time. Why don't you go back, man? Take us back to like 2018. Like you're in Dallas, you're at a pretty what I would call stable, as you described it, I think on some post position, and then you decided to go, man. So talk through that kind of evolution, if you could, man, of like why and how you got into this whole traveling around and taking picture mode.
Yeah, so back in 2017, we were in Dallas, and kind of my first gig out of school was a multimedia position for an agency in the Dallas world, doing tech, doing interior design companies and furniture, and doing, rebrands for guys, selling their companies for $300 million, that type of stuff. So it was a cool gig, and it was better than the statistical pay coming out of college. So I was really grateful for that, but I don't know. I think I have this kind of bug, this enterprising spirit that drives me forward. A lot of which has come from some of those struggles that I think you're going to allude to, coming down the road here. But just pretty quickly, I was like, hey, what if I, take some of my free time? And at the time, it was weddings. Like, let me just take this creative thing and go and tell stories with it. And reached out to some of the bigger wedding companies in Dallas, and ended up doing that. And basically, I was working like nights and weekends, doing photo video stuff, and quickly, replaced that income. And then I was like, well, I'm spending less hours on nights and weekends than I'm spending in the agency, and making as much. So maybe I can do something for myself here. So I stepped out of that. And what was really cool was I had built a network there, and even with that agency, they continued to hire me for the next 18 months before we moved on. And just kind of give me a leg up and a support in that. So I got, I'll speak to the power of building a network. If I had anything I would advise to someone is, um, I had some great people, kind of help me with that. So yeah, we jumped out. Kendall was an RN, and we got this bug to start traveling. And that was, we were in Dallas, kind of bored of Dallas one week, had kind of seen all the things, and to get out of there, I mean, you had to drive 8 hours to see the desert. So we were just want to see something. So we got on Google Flights. We're like, hey, let's just look to anywhere. And we figured out that on a Saturday we could go to LA early, spend all day there, fly back at like 9 p.m. And we're like, okay, so we land, we take an Uber out to Santa Monica, we see the beach, the West Coast for the first time. I don't know, maybe we hike to the Hollywood sign, your typical, Hollywood montage type of a thing. But it just gave us this itch for, man, there's like more to see than we've seen in Pennsylvania and Texas growing up. And so we did that, and we just were inspired by that. And Kendall figured out, like, hey, what if we do this travel nursing thing? And I was doing more remote contracts. So went out to California, did a contract, went down to Utah, fell in love with the mountains there. And as we were doing that, we're taking pictures, we're shooting for ourselves, we're doing Instagram and all of that. in that space and said, "Hey, let's start creating in the outdoor space." Same idea that everyone else had at the time was like, "Hey, let's do, van life and travel photography and stuff like that." So it started out very much the two of us, and it has evolved to what it is, and we'll get into how we ended up in Alaska and all of that. But yeah, that's the basis of the story. It was like I think I've never really bought into the idea of stability. I don't think a paycheck is going to give me that. So I was willing to give it up to try to create something for us.
I mean, like I said, like you and I talked right before we came on. I have a ton of notes, and you're going to say something, and I'm going to go right to it. So you literally had a side hustle before you kind of went off on your own and said, "Hey, let's do it." You knew you had it in you to do it because you were doing it for weddings and you're doing it all like you had it, right? And then you created the network to where you kind of had your own gig, but yet you're doing contract work for your former employer. It's like the blueprint of what people that want to go off on their own have the side hustle, prove it, then go off and have a little bit of a nest egg and support system with a network. So makes complete sense. I love the idea of literally hopping out to California, hopping back on a flight at 9 p.m. I mean, it's look, I lived in Texas and 100%, I get it. You can drive down I-10 and not see anything for like
Oh
hours
yeah.
and hours, right?
Oh yeah, for days.
Um, but that's crazy cool. And then you have the ability because of her work and your work, you now get this bug, you get into nature and you see it. And then I see him post, you're like, okay, we're in Montana. Okay, we're in the Dakotas. Okay, we're in Wyoming. Now and all of a sudden you look on a map and go, there, right? So
Yeah.
how did you guys end up from the lower 48 to, you know, up there in the great wilderness of Alaska?
It was similar to that. We ran around California, we ran around Utah and the Southwest and Nevada, Arizona, and then we bumped up to Wyoming and then into Montana and then up into Washington and came back down, but we ended up in Park City for a winter. And so we're up in the mountains at 9,000 feet and it's 0 degrees every morning. And so for a couple kids who spent their first winter together, in Texas, and then we did a California winter, all of a sudden we're like completely changed, but we fell in love with it. And we're out there, snowshoeing and mountaineering and stuff like that. And so, yeah, in 2021 in the summer, we were up in the Tetons and had done some cool climbs. And then Kendall is, just always on Instagram looking for the next thing to do, the next thing to climb, whatever. And she's following some people in Alaska. And she's, can we go to Alaska? Sure. We got an airstream, we got a way to create wherever we're going. At the time, there was COVID and all that kind of wiped us clean, so there was no nest egg. We were just going kind of by the seat of our pants, but like, yeah, let's go to Alaska. So yeah, I joked that we kept heading north, and then there was no further north to go, so we stopped in Alaska. But yeah, so once we got up here, it really kind of captured our hearts and imaginations. The landscapes, the mountains, the glaciers, the blues, beautiful, and the people are just the best of the best. We love them, and I also joke now that if a town has a stoplight, it's too big for me at this point, which I like about it. There's all these little 3,000 people communities, and that's where we try to spend our time is out in the middle of nowhere. So it's this kind of progression north, and then once we got up here, and you get a taste of the wide open spaces here, and it's kind of hard to go back.
I can see the smile on your face, man. You just love it, and it comes through like in your social and everything else. I'm sure, in people who talk to you, I just get this feeling of you're never coming back, right? Like this is
Yeah.
home for you guys, and that's great. Personally, no for me, right? But I'm going to go visit. I'd love to do that, but we'll get into my fear of the cold later. But in terms of like when you went up there and the struggles, not struggles, but like the challenges that any new business has, right? And you got up there and you said, okay, I mean, there was a post and you had a picture of you and Kendall standing out of the Airstream, which I think, do you
Mm.
still live in that area? I mean, is that still it, right? That where you guys are at? You still have that
Yeah, we
Airstream
spend
part of
we
it?
spend most of our time in the Airstream traveling around for work. In the winter now, just because there's so much work and conversations and all of
No,
that. And our son, who's 17 months old, we rent houses some. I think we're going to buy a house this spring. We've had a lot of trouble deciding where we want to be, but we rent houses. So I'm in a house right now,
that's cool.
but we'll spend our warm months in it. And we have put in our time off grid, -20,
I
heating
was
ourselves.
going to
So
say, right? So
I'll still take that off grid claim.
so you're in the Airstream, you're up there, it's just you and her.
Yeah.
Is that when you hit a point? There's a picture outside of the Airstream with you guys, and you're smiling. And you're like, "Hey, we're smiling, totally happy." Oh, by the way, I have $13 in my bank account, right? And like something of that. Was that in Alaska when you hit that level of challenge, or was that before you took that leap to go north?
Yes, so the $13 part was not too uncommon. Building a new business, being in the create what 98% of creative businesses fail or whatever. And so we
Yeah,
just like doggedly committed to doing this. And so we started it in 2019. We had some success. We lined up a bunch of work. 2020 was going to be our year. I told all my friends, this is my breakout, man. We got contracts lined up. And then of course it all disappeared by March. Everything was gone. And so, we went out and that's when we got into off grid was because we went out to Wyoming. It's $1,200 a week for an RV park. And Kendall was like, these people are doing it without an, I was like, okay, cool. There's a public land. This is awesome. So we just threw ourselves in. And yeah, it was, it had been, it was for a while kind of contract to contract. And when the work came, that was great. And when it didn't, we were a little more lean. The issue that winter was that it hit, I mean, it dropped to -20 and it did not come back up. So we got pounded with snow. It was deep and bitterly cold. We're up in Alaska. And the money runs out and there's nothing in the pipeline. Usually there's always work coming. There's a client, a retainer, or whatever it is. And things had kind of dried up, partly just because that's how it goes and you always got to be drumming up new business, and partly because we had been having so much fun in Alaska, we kind of stopped drumming up new business, which is a lesson that we learned. So we stay hungry now. We always act like there's $13 as far as our pipeline goes. So yeah, in that moment, what's the dichotomy of it is like the sun was out that day and it was gorgeous, and we're totally stoked by where we're at, and these environments bring us alive. And so the smiles are genuine, but also the that like fear for survival is there too in that moment, which is like, I think it's authentic. The picture is authentic in the context of the story, and you have to hear the whole thing. And so as the post says, that post went pretty viral as far as LinkedIn goes. That we went out and we hit every single contact that we had, and we said, hey, we're doing discounted winter in Alaska mini shoots. We just told a story and said, hey, we're out here in the middle of nowhere, in the mountains, airstream, snow. People bought in. We booked $25,000 of work from that, and we learned like, hey, we should be telling stories and inspiring people always, and then we'll have work always. And that's been the case since then. But yeah, that moment was kind of brutal, and it was a hard winter.
it's and just quickly, I read this is look, man. I've done some challenging stuff. When I read this, I was like, oh hell no, right? You said
Yeah.
I took a chainsaw and I cut a hole in the 2 foot ice on the lake. I
Yep.
dropped like a bucket down, a 5 gallon bucket. I got like 10 of those, and I pulled the sled back quickly before it froze. And
Before it froze, and it does.
I put it through a pump. Then I got
Yeah.
inside, and I just read this. I was like, oh hell no, not even close. Am I doing any of this? Right? I was like, no. But I mean, good for you. And I don't know, man. It reeks of, hey, I'm going to have to make it one way or the other. And it's the
Yeah.
elements. And in this case, it was the elements plus business plus everything else. And it's just a mindset that you guys have of, like whatever you throw at me, I'm going to figure it out and make it. Right. And it just kind of comes across. So let me take you back then. And you hit on it a little bit, but you mentioned like this entrepreneurial spirit of maybe something that happened in your childhood. And you were at a young age, I guess, hit with an eye disease or something of that nature that was serious. Like it could have been like blind, this in your future, right? So
Yeah.
can you talk through that a little bit and maybe how that's impacted, like your desire just to be free and just do your own thing?
Yeah, so in first grade, at our school, everybody got a vision test, and I don't remember the specifics, but I came, so maybe I was 7 or 8. I came home and I just announced to my dad, everybody got 20/20 on their vision test, and I got 20/60. How much better is that? And he goes, uh-huh. Uh, so within a week, we're, going to doctor's office and stuff like that. And you think, oh, okay, the kid needs contacts, whatever it
Right.
is. But I hadn't had vision issues before. So they're asking questions about that. And pretty quickly we determined that I had a rare disease called uveitis. And I think there was some, trend toward macular degeneration there, where I just had an inflammatory disease in the back of my eye where the retinas and the uvea were being damaged by, chronic inflammation, which ended up turning into systemic inflammation and a number of different issues throughout my body. So through elementary and middle school, I had like debilitating arthritis, and was, really unable to move very well. And so, yeah, we were doing all kinds of clinical trials. I was getting steroid injections into my eyeballs, which means you get
Yeah.
numbed and then you sit still while they put a needle in, and then they wiggle it while they're pulling it out to agitate it. So you see the room shake like this. Yeah, not ideal. On a maybe a quarterly basis for a number of years. And that's how I grew up. And the doctor said, hey, we're just trying to make this thing last as long as we can. We think you're going to be blind, by your early 20s. And then even in my teens, when the systemic thing got so bad, there was, possibility of me not living. So yeah, that I think put this real, like when I say I don't believe in certainty or in, those type, like in just security from a W-2 job, or I'm just like, life is happening right now and it could end right now. And you never know what you have or don't have. But I really do feel like I got a second chance with my vision in particular. And so, yeah, it's cool that it ended up being like now I get to go and capture some of those beautiful things in the world and bring those to other people for them to see. And I try to remind myself to be grateful that I get to see them. And I also have wondered, like, maybe like that snapshot in the camera is this clarity that I still don't even get with my vision now because I still have some floaters and some like residual damage from that. Um, so that's I don't know. That's just me kind of formulating whatever on that and try to make sense of it. But yeah, it's something where I push myself and
We had
yeah.
talked before, and I had, and from what we had talked and what I had read online was, yes, you could have been blind, right? And if you're told that at 15, I don't even, I can't understand how I would respond as a 15-year-old hearing that. I don't know how I would respond now, and let alone how your parents, dealt with that. Being a parent myself, that just, it scares the utter, essence out of me.
Yeah.
Um, and then hearing, that it could have been, fatal. That's something I did not know. And then you look at this and go, okay, you came from that, not being able to move as much, not being as athletic as much, to you're doing rappels down 50-foot glaciers and kayaking and in these, these waters that are just beautiful, and doing, everything that is outdoor. You have come from that person in that stage of life to where you are now. Like, it's amazing. I mean, truly hearing that, to just looking at this, that's an amazing journey. It's unbelievable. So
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's a
go ahead, man.
tremendous
Sorry.
privilege.
Yeah, it's, and you said the word grateful. I mean, that's what came to my mind. Is just living as you can live it. But let's go back into your business, I guess. And you work with, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're working with like Birkenstock, the brand. You're working with Land's End. You're working with some really big brands that people know of. Did you ever think that you'd be working with that level of brand when you started this?
If I say yes, then it sounds like a jerk. Uh, but
But
how and all of that. But yeah, I mean, that was the vision. Was
yeah,
like, hey, let's take what these brands are doing because they've been, just creating a really great product, and a lot of them creating really great stories for years and years. And let's go and connect with those people and help them further that. So yeah, there have been a couple times where it has been really surprising, or we see ads, and because Kendall and I have, it's been funny. It's been like this very commercial production type of business with a influencer twist to it, because we've done a lot of the modeling just being out here. So having our faces on it occasionally has been surreal. But yeah, I think for me the vision was like, yeah, if I'm going to go for it, I'm going to go for it. And so it was exciting, and those were the ones that we went and targeted, because I imagine those were the ones who got it. When they're using great content, then they're going to be willing to invest into great content. So at the with the potential risk of sounding like my head was big, and it was back then. That's what we were aiming for, yeah.
I wanted to ask that question. I'm glad you brought it up. Are the companies using you guys as like I don't want to say the word models, but the people showcasing the product? And I'm like, I saw something about you guys around a campfire with like,
Yeah.
and then the jackets of Land End, and then obviously Bergenstock. Like, are you guys in the content, or do they fly people to you and say, okay, this person's going to be the person wearing it, or is it just, hey man, you guys are wearing it, you're there, go for it?
Yeah, so it has been an evolution for a number of years. Before we've, made this change, we brought on business partners and grown to becoming, a full service production company. This started out as Kendall and myself as, creators and photographers. We're both really good behind a camera. We're both capable. And so it's been us in it and us behind the camera, which we have done for a number of years in that, consumer and product space largely. Now we're doing that work. We're doing work in the tourism space. We're starting to attract, vehicle manufacturers and RV and people in tech and stuff like that. So there are definitely times where you put out a casting call, or you're going and you're meeting with a business owner, or you're following someone else and creating that human experience. More of that work is happening. But for years, and even going forward, kind of one of our superpowers is we can be a really lean and mean production team, and we can combo that with, putting our faces on camera when we need to in the product space. And the reason kind of why that's worked is we figured out this formula, especially in the performance marketing world, for creating kind of like product first lifestyle images, where we really believe in immersing someone in an experience and making them feel the emotion of a moment, and then tying the brand to that. And so we've just learned how to work well together. And so people have been pretty comfortable with the results that we've generated and seeing that. And they're like, yeah, rocket, who are we going to send up to Alaska? But we can always, it just depends on the shoot. And we have requests for people that look differently, or, families or whatever it is. We can source that, but we try to keep things pretty scrappy as much as possible, so it can be sustainable and affordable. I mean, sometimes a contract, it costs $20,000 a week on average for another company to send a crew up and do what we do, just to get them up here between flights and lodging and all that. And so if you can save that money and have us do it even better than they do, because we know how to live in -20 and work in that, then people make sense of that real quick. So kind of our superpower.
Like, I read some of the stuff. You have I mean, it sounds surreal, but I mean, I read it. Hey, some guy like was flying the plane, I guess can land on snow or something crazy, right? And he's like, are you guys sure? He's like, oh yeah, right? Like, and he's like, yeah, I can't land here, but if you guys can like hop out of my helicopter and just give
Yeah.
me some code when you're ready. And then you guys have your son with you at times, right? And I'm like, this is crazy. Like, you guys are like living this thing. And I was like, dude, this is crazy what you guys are doing. But I understand the economics of it. Now you guys, know the area. And then I read something where you're kayaking along, you dump the all the camera equipment in the water,
Yeah.
right? It's all in well, not Ziploc, but it's all waterproof stuff and it's all good. But I mean, that the to do what you do in the elements and go to the extreme that you do, I mean, I can see why you're successful. Like, I mean, honestly, like you guys can really see why you've been successful in this. I did want to get to this before we get too far, and we have to kind of end a little bit, but I could go on a while. This one quote, and you kind of hit on it, but I really want you to explain this one or your thought on it. Your recent post said comfort kills dreams. And I read that and I just had to think on it. And I was like, man, I'm asking you that, man. So, I get the elements and I get it, but comfort kills dreams, man. Can you talk on that one?
Yeah, so I had a good friend of mine with good intentions years ago. I'll be honest. It's the guy that I really admire who doesn't considered me to be a friend because I knew him when I was a punk teenager and he was sick of me. But he told me I think if we had lunch it would be fantastic now, but it's just life. He told me that one time we were talking, he's like, "Yeah, I have dreams too," but then I turned 30 and I had kids and I realized real life had to happen, and that moment just kind of cemented itself, and I was like, okay, I hear that, and I absolutely commend you providing for your family and doing all these things, but you drive a pretty new car. It's a pretty nice. I think you chose, to some degree, some stability and comfort over these things that you say are your dreams that had to die. And why was it the case that that had to happen? And so that statement, I try to on LinkedIn, I try to get good reach, I try to inspire people, I try to, um, write something that people will want to read. So that statement was intentionally a little bit divisive, but the whole point was sometimes, your dream, sometimes the thing that you want to accomplish is on the other side of difficult and hard. And so many people tell us, yeah, it's on my bucket list to get up there, or Kendall ran ultra marathons in college, 50K and 50 mile, and that was painful. And people are like, oh, I could, I dream of doing something like that, and there's just a whole lot of discomfort in between here and there. And that's been the case for us, the chainsawing through a lake and then having to filter water in the middle of winter is uncomfortable. But at the end of the day, when you've gone through that, you develop this grit and this tenacity that comes across as real and that people buy into. And for what we're selling, people want to see that and experience that, and not just hear that we're in a comfy studio in Anchorage and then just popping out and shooting some stuff on the side of the road and acting like we're out here creating Alaskan content from the wilds. And so for me, I'm always just going, okay, there's probably some discomfort that's going to happen for the next level of business, for the next level of personal growth, for marriage, for parenting, whatever. Like the real stuff is on the other side of uncomfortable moments.
I love you mentioned the personal aspect to that,
Yeah,
right? The uncomfortable piece on your health,
yeah,
on your marriage, on your friendships, on obviously business, right? Kind of where we start, but you also look at it from a perspective of personal as well.
yeah.
And I love that. I think that quote is one of the ones I may put up on the board here and go, hey, I can relate to it. I hope a lot of other people can, because I know I can. I think that's phenomenal. Now, you mentioned in terms of discomfort to get to where you want to go. So before I get off into a few quirky things here, I'm not going to let you off without asking, what does 2025 discomfort for you look like? Like, what are you going to accomplish in 2025 that's okay? I'm going to have to go through discomfort to get there.
Yeah, I think I've got to continue to one of the things that's uncomfortable that I push myself to do is just go and connect with people who are better at what I'm doing than I am. It's been probably the biggest driver of growth in our business is go and find other founders and other creators who are better than I am, and say, hey, tell me what you're doing. Would you give me 15 minutes? And other people who are, where we're at do the same, and I try to offer that to them because people have responded and given me that time. So going and learning and just admitting to myself that I'm not everything that I want to be, and that I the vision for 10 years from now is that my team is introduced as one of the leading storytelling and creative agencies in the world. And there's a tremendous amount of discomfort between now and then. And there's going to be some stuff that we're going to make between now and then that I'm going to look back and be like, oh, I thought that was good, but that was not. So, shooting our shot and telling stories, writing every single day, being vulnerable on LinkedIn. People love the origin story and the 13 bucks story, and it can be uncomfortable to say yeah, we did our best, but there have been moments where it has completely sucked. So yeah, being vulnerable. Some objectives are, we want to triple revenue this year, and so that's going to mean, aiming higher on the type of brands that we're working with, the type of contracts that we're putting together, and getting really digging into with our clients, like, hey, how do we move the needle for me? Because I'm not trying to upcharge you. I'm trying to figure out how you uh, 10x whatever you're going to spend with me. So there's, sometimes it just can be scary to think even bigger. But we want people to rise with us as well. It's always about how we can grow people around us. But yeah, I get uncomfortable in those conversations and in those pitches and all those types of things. So I feel like I'm rambling a little bit there,
No,
but yeah, that's
I
the
saw
answer,
it.
I think.
Trust me. Like that's it right there. Okay, so I'll tell you what. Let's spend 3 minutes. I have about three or four things here, but if we stop on one and just have to go there, I'll go there. Right?
Okay.
Your love for black licorice. Like why do people hate that on LinkedIn? Like why do people scorn you for that? Like like black licorice. Look, red licorice is there, then black, but I mean black's not horrible. It's not horrible.
I think black licorice is amazing, and I don't remember what sparked that, but I knew for certain um, that would be polarizing. And you call it what you shouldn't care about vanity metrics on LinkedIn, but I like getting a lot of reach, and it brings in what's cool is the algorithm then says, "Hey, look at this really cool glacier picture, or whatever," and people follow me, so they did.
Hey,
So I
I
posted it just for
I just thought it
fun
was
and said, "Hey,
hilarious.
let's
Like, what's
let's
wrong
get an
with you
argument
people?
going here."
Like, I don't
Yeah.
know, like what's wrong, but apparently everybody hates it. But I thought it was hilarious,
Well,
right?
what's funny is that a lot of people, when I posted the follow-up saying, I posted about Black Widow, it was met with vitriol and hate and disgust. It's
Yes,
a lot of people thought I was being serious, and they were like, "I'm so
yes.
sorry that people were." I was like, "It's fine." Like that's
I was like,
the whole
it's
point was
licorice.
to
Are
make
you
people
kidding? Like,
mad.
like seriously, I'm not being serious about licorice, but still, I get it. Hey, congrats. We have obviously a little boy has been on in the shoots. You're expecting a little girl, is that right?
Yes, we are.
Man, like when's our due date here?
Mid-April.
I'm not gonna tell anybody. We got any names picked out or anything yet?
Yeah, we do. We don't tell. We didn't share
Oh, I
Milo's
thought I was gonna
name
get
until
it.
he
Like
was born.
you and
Nope.
I. Oh, I thought I
Nope.
was gonna get it. Oh,
No one knows. Only the three of us and
only the
Milo
three
knows.
and
And
Bill and
Milo
the
knows
dog.
how to say it, but no one can understand him. Yeah, the
Yeah,
dog doesn't care.
and,
The
and the
dog will be
dog. The dog
disappointed when
knows.
she shows up.
The dog should be in more clips. I love the dog. Right, Bailey the
Yeah.
dog. Get him in more stuff. Love him, by the way. All right. I didn't know this was a thing. Please tell me if I'm off. I saw something you posted on July 4th in Alaska. You guys run cars off cliffs. Is this
Yes, the
is
the
this
Glacier
true?
View car launch is an icon of Alaska. So what happens, at 10 p.m., um, there's sun overhead. So fireworks are no good. So you got to come up with something to do. So half of us run up a mountain. It's called Mount Marathon, iconic race on July 4th down in Seward, and you just run 3,000 feet straight up and back down. And then the other half of us launch cars off of a cliff out in Glacier View. So it's these old, they take the engine, they take the oil, all that type of stuff out. It's private property. It gets cleaned up. But yeah, a ton of people show up and they have this slingshot thing set up and they just fly them off the cliff. Our favorite is the RVs because they're matchboxes to begin with and they just disintegrate when they hit the ground. So
On July
yeah, it's
5th,
it's wild. Like
on
Alaska
July
is
5th,
is
I
that same
want
as you think it
video
is.
of this all over your social. Okay? I
Yeah.
don't know why there's not a video yet. I searched for it. There's gotta be there. And then the last thing, you had video of like, oh, here we are in our camper, and I'm kind of working, and there's two bears outside fighting for the food. Oh, the bears are gone. No big deal. Like black bears, like legit, like bears outside, right?
Yeah.
And
So
like you
bear,
have food outside, so bears show up, of course, and like
that
it's Alaska, of course they do.
that was a particularly stupid moment. So we were getting ready to go out of town for the holidays and we were leaving our dog with some friends. So I bought her a bunch of food and I put it in a locking, just a the 27-gallon tote or whatever had a fortunately it had a locking latch on it, but there, it wasn't very strong. Sure wasn't bear proof. And I left them outside. And we're down on the coast where there's just, black bears everywhere. And so I wake up in the middle of the night and I feel the air straighten thud. And I was like, oh, windstorm. Because, we could feel it move if we're in a windstorm. It's
Right.
not uncommon. And I feel it thud again. I was like, no, that's different. And then I hear thump, thump, thump. And another thought, and I thought, I know what's going on. So
Of
it
course
was
you did.
dark. It was late season, and I kind of look out the window and I just see two shadowy objects. I mean, just going like WWE SmackDown on this toad out here, trying to bust that dog food out of there. And I'm like, okay, I got two bears, I got dog food. I'm not going out there. And
Right.
so I,
Seriously.
I grabbed the fob for the truck and set off the alarm, and they ran off. And I've actually still got that tote, but I mean, it's just got a perfect impression of a bear's mouth where it bit in trying to get that open. But
They get it open.
anyone who camps, no, it didn't get in
Oh,
it. I fortunately woke up early enough, which I'm grateful for because they don't need to be eating that. And the whole, anyone who camps, any ranger listening to this would be like, "Where is this guy? I'm going to give him a fine for leaving that food out." They know better than that, and I knew better than that. But that was just a
dude, that's
lapse on my
great.
part.
I
But
mean,
it ended
it's
up with a
such an
good
Alaska
story. So
story, isn't it?
it's
It's such an
completely
Alaska
Alaskan.
story. Two bears are fighting. Ah, whatever. Hit the alarm. Ah, they're gone. Go back to sleep. I would be traumatized. I'd be driving to the nearest airport. I'm out. Right. That's it. I'm gone. Right.
Yeah.
Well, look, Collin, this has been like seriously so much fun. I knew it would be. I read your story. I had no clue kind of what you went through as a kid. Um, to hear the journey that you and Kendall have been on, and just to know that it's only the beginning, um, is awesome, man. It's just great to know you. It's great to now really follow. If you're not following Collin and Kendall, go there on LinkedIn. You guys on Instagram as well? Is that where you post some stuff, or is it mostly LinkedIn with you guys?
Yeah, follow Kendall. Kendall does Instagram. She's like 20,000 followers there, and it's all like our personal stuff. So you want to just follow along the journey and family and all that, that's the place.
Absolutely, man. I want more of the dog included. I need video of Bailey the dog included more, man. I mean, like
She
it's
hates the
awesome.
camera. It
Hey,
doesn't happen
whatever.
very often.
Awesome. All right, well, guys, thank you so much for listening. Collin, thank you again, man, for joining. Really appreciate you. All right, and you guys have a great week. Follow along, hit subscribe, all that fun stuff. See you guys next week.
Thanks, Dave.